Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Chapter 56. Is Lizzie really an ordinary person? Mephisto, Apostle of Fear. Bang. The heavy doors of the church were closed to block the cool evening wind outside, and the sound of huge amounts of echoed in the cold hall. The hall is dimly lit, the ceiling above the head is high, and the hollow part can see the corridor on the second floor. Moonlight spilled into the old church through the dilapidated roof. Lizzie stepped on the rotten wooden boards and walked towards the front. There were rows of chairs sitting in front of the podium, and the wooden chairs were damp and covered with moss. It seems to be a building that no one has forgotten for many years, and there is no vitality in sight. Click. This place is kind of weird. James Wu walked at the back, looking around. A gust of cold air came, making people shivering and creeping. He shivered a few times and reminded, it doesn't look like the church is that big from the outside, but why does the space seem to get a lot bigger after entering? Because the door of the church is just a portal to another dimension, a bit similar to Doctor Strange's mirror image technique. Wanda frowned, and explained with a gradually dignified expression. No wonder the police couldn't find any leads. Lizzie looked suddenly enlightened, but actually noticed something strange when he stepped into the gate just now. There is a subtle difference between the time flow inside the house and the outside, which is difficult for ordinary people to detect, but he, who is also a magician, can naturally feel it. Lee, you have to get out of here. 11. Wanda felt a little regretful. She shouldn't have brought Lizzie in with her. The Mephisto apostle who can create a different dimension must be a senior magician. She wasn't fully sure that she could deal with it. If something happened to her, Lizzie might be tired of filing a case. That's right. I also think we should go out and wait for reinforcements. The task force from the Heavenly Sword Bureau will arrive soon. Behind. Upon hearing this, James Wu hurriedly turned and walked towards the gate. Which, we're all in, do you think he'll let us out? Lizzie ignored the counselor agent, but held the witch's restless little hand. You have to believe in yourself, Mephisto's apostles are not powerful. But it's too dangerous for you to stay. Wanda showed self-blame on her face, and she only now realized how stupid and wrong it was to bring Lizzie by herself. Although his magic ability is very strong, but after all, he is just getting started. No matter how fast you learn, without years of accumulation, it is impossible to fully display the power of magic. Bang bang bang. At this time, James Wu, who was trying to open the door, pulled hard and found that the door was completely locked, and he couldn't even pull it. Fake. Don't even think about going out, because the door is not open. He realized that his face was a little bad when he couldn't get out, not because he was afraid of death. Instead, they feel that their current behavior is no different from sending them to death in vain. You should stay where you are and wait for reinforcements. Boom. At this time, the rotten wooden boards under everyone's feet trembled, and with the intensified trembling, the surrounding facilities began to change. Pieces of chairs in front of them corroded, turning into dust at a speed visible to the naked eye. The priest's podium and the statue of Jesus in the center. In a few seconds, everything turned into a puddle of soil. In just a few seconds, the original ancient church underwent earth-shaking changes and became a spacious hall. Be careful, everyone, he's coming. Wanda scanned the surroundings vigilantly, her scarlet eyes became sharper. The white greasy little hand held Lizzie and blocked her behind. Boom. At the moment with violent tremors, the central floor of the hall split, 4 pillars depicting strange runes rose up, and strange lines appeared in the middle area. Guys, I am the apostle of Mephisto's nightmare in the world, Carrot. In the dark corner in front of the hall, a man in a black robe walked out slowly. He took off the hood, revealing a pale face with black bags under the eyes, and black lines at the corners of the eyes. He opened his arms and said loudly, "Welcome to witness the great and sacred ceremony." Which, I just said that he is very weak. The bags under his eyes are so dark, it is obvious that he has kidney deficiency. After seeing Carrot, Lizzie couldn't help complaining. Sure enough, it is the standard equipment for blackened people. Regardless of whether it is made in China or America, basically every blackened person has black eye bags. The original Scarlet Witch late Blacken also has black eye makeup. It seems that without blackening, there is no way to see this person is blackened. In other words, if the bags under the eyes are not black, it is not worthy of blacken. You. Boy, if you weren't hiding behind Scarlet Witch, you would be dead. Carrot, who was opening her arms to pretend, twitched the corners of her mouth when she heard these words. Her fierce eyes fell on Li Zi, and she said in a cold tone, "Witch, he is killing me." Li Zi met the apostle's gaze, forgetting that the witch leaned back. "Li, don't talk nonsense." Wanda was quite helpless when she heard that. Ordinary people have long been terrified in the face of this situation, and this guy actually dared to make fun of the Mephisto apostle. Then she looked at the apostle Carrot and asked, "What are you going to do when you let us in?" "Wanda, don't you know what I want?" The apostle Carrot ignored Li Zi anymore. In his eyes, Li Zi was just an ordinary person, without any threat at all. Compared to Scarlet Witch, other things are not worth mentioning. "You want chaos force too?" Li Zi, who was originally hiding behind the witch, realized that someone coveted his wife again, and his eyes suddenly became unfriendly. "It's not me, I want to dedicate chaos force to the supreme nightmare." The apostle Keela caressed the lines on the pillar, and looked at Wanda unscrupulously with fanatical eyes. "I have been waiting for you, Wanda. After waiting for so many days, you finally returned to West Market Town. Quote, I knew you would come to get involved in this kind of case. No wonder, people from the Heavenly Sword Bureau will find clues this morning." After listening to Wanda, she can imagine it no matter how simple she is. A few days ago, mysterious cases of disappearances began to appear, but the Heavenly Sword Bureau searched for so long, and there was no clue at all, but there was a new clue this morning. It turns out that everything is caused by the Mephisto apostle, and the purpose is to lure himself into the net. She couldn't figure out why so many people want to get chaos force. So, get ready to be sacrificed. Talking, the apostle Keela snapped his fingers, and countless figures suddenly appeared around the hall. They walk like puppets, with indifferent expressions and dull eyes without any emotion, as if they are really like puppets. Josie. Wanda noticed the familiar figure in the crowd. Her face suddenly became cold, and she said angrily, "These are all people you captured. You damn devil. More than 1,000 people, what a beast." Li Zi next to him also had a gloomy tone. "It is estimated that there are thousands of people, most of them are children. All under the age of 10. I dare not think how dark my heart is to extend my claws to young children. Hee hee, for a great cause, sacrifice is necessary." The apostle Keela laughed, and the next second her tone was suddenly cold. "Grab Scarlet Witch, and kill everyone else." The words fell. The crowd who were like puppets all raised their heads at the same time and stared at Li Zi, who was surrounded in the middle. Next second, whoosh, thousands of people burst into action at the same time like a wave of zombies, rushing towards them, and all the people in the front row were young children. Hateful. Wanda's fair and pretty face was anxious and angry. She couldn't deal with a group of children at all. Without any choice, she had no choice but to condense a layer of reddish energy protective cover, wrapping several people together inside. "What do we do now? He has an army of kids." James Wu looked at the sleepwalker frantically flapping the protective cover outside, holding the gun tightly in his hand. Hesitation. "Don't shoot." Li Zi pressed down the muzzle of the gun in his hand, and said in a deep voice, "It's useless to kill innocent people, the apostle will find more people." Then he looked at Wanda beside him, and reminded, "Witch, there are not many people on Earth who can resist the psychic attack of origin magic power." "Let me try." Wanda nodded, slowly closed her eyes and took a deep breath, clenched her hands slightly. Whoosh. In an instant, she opened her eyes again and found a dim world in front of her, surrounded by countless weeping figures, standing in the darkness trembling with fear. These are the souls of sleepwalkers, and they all come together. Josie. Wanda saw one of the figures, precisely because of Yin. At the moment the little girl was squatting on the ground, crying and shaking with fear. Groups of black aura wrapped around her body, eroding her body. "Josie, wake up." Wanda walked over and spoke again, trying to wake the little girl up. But she still didn't respond. Seeing this, Wanda had no choice but to spread out her hands, gathering the scarlet chaos energy, endless energy continuously gathering, even her eyes were filled with red light. And at the same time, real world. Wanda was closing her eyes, a scarlet light appeared all over her body, and with the surge of airflow intensified, the air was once distorted. This is chaos force. In the center of the hall, the apostle Carrot in front of the pillar felt the terrifying surge of energy, and couldn't help but feel a lot of emotion in his heart. Boom. That's it. In the protective shield formed by the condensed scarlet light, a terrifying wave suddenly erupted, sweeping outward. All those who touched the red light froze in place for a moment. After a few seconds, their empty eyes gradually came to their senses, and they looked around blankly. Witch, you are amazing. Li Zi was not surprised. From the very beginning he didn't think the witch would lose. After all, witches have origin magic power. Even if they are just beginning to practice the Dark God Book, it is easy to deal with an apostle of Mephisto. Let's put it this way, Wanda with origin magic power is considered lazy and doesn't study. As long as the time is long enough, her strength will continue to grow. What's more, the current Wanda is a hardworking and good witch. I just did what you said. Wanda opened her eyes and was relieved to see all those sleepwalkers woke up. Sister Witch, you finally came to save me. At this moment, Josie rushed out from the crowd, hugged Wanda and said with a grieved tone, a Gargamel caught me here just now. Gargamel. Li Zi found it interesting, and glanced at the Apostle Carrot in the distance, but the other party looked a bit like Gargamel in the Smurfs. Sister, can you catch that bad guy for you? Wanda gently touched Josie's head, and then fixed her eyes on the Apostle Carrot in the distance. The Apostle Carrot in front of the pillar happened to meet the witch's cold gaze, but there was no fear in his eyes. Origin magic power is really powerful. I dedicate you to Master Mephisto. I will definitely receive a gift. It's really courting death. However, he didn't wait for him to finish. A crimson figure had already floated up, and then the red light wrapped around the pillar, and when it was pulled hard, it suddenly collapsed. Boom. Column. It turned into countless wreckage fragments and was directly buried by Apostle Carrot. Lee, you take them out of here first. Wanda floated in midair, turned her head and asked. Don't even think about leaving alone. Bang. Piles of pillar fragments suddenly rose from the sky, and there were also bursts of terrifying and gloomy black aura. It's the Apostle Carrot, who radiates black aura all over his body and flies up into the air, overlooking everyone in the hall, with black aura radiating from his eyes. Still able to stand up. Seeing him flying out, Wanda waved his hands and blasted endless scarlet beams. Boom. Facing the oncoming scarlet light beam, the Apostle Kila opened his hand without any fear, and a cloud of black mist shrouded in front of him. The moment the terrifying energy hit the black mist, endless strong winds oscillated and raged. The people below were completely awakened by the strong wind, and they all hid behind the bunker in horror. Great gift crab. James Wu leaned against a table and glanced at the two fighting above. He looked at Li Zi, who was holding the little girl next to him. Li, you and Wanda are together, didn't you learn a few tricks of witchcraft secretly? Can you open that door, otherwise no one will be able to leave. Don't think about it, unless Carrot is killed, the space cannot be destroyed from inside. Li Zi glanced at the witch and Carrot, not knowing what he was thinking about. What? James Wu was a little desperate. He actually expected an ordinary person to save them, so he might as well think of other ways. Boom. At the moment, above the center of the spacious hall, one crimson and one jet black figure exuded terrifying power and shrouded the surroundings. The power emanating from their bodies is like big invisible hands, pulling each other to play games. But obvious. The momentum of the black aura is far inferior to that of the scarlet light, and it is constantly suppressed. The scarlet energy is gradually devouring the black aura. Damn. The Apostle Carrot's forehead was covered with sweat. He clearly felt this in his heart, and he underestimated Scarlet Witch's strength. To be precise, Chaos Force is underestimated. I thought that a person who has never studied magic, even with origin magic power, would not be so easy to deal with. Carrot give up resistance. Wanda saw that the opponent was already struggling, so she resolutely began to increase the pressure, and even more terrifying energy spewed out from her fingertips. Put pressure on Carrot and go. Law. Looking at the scarlet light that enveloped him, the Apostle Kila couldn't help cursing in a low voice. Yu Guang looked for opportunities to counterattack. Boy, I almost forgot about you. Suddenly he noticed Li Zi and Chao Shi hiding behind a stone table not far away. In order to catch Wanda as a sacrifice, he did an investigation to know Li Zi's identity. I also know that the other party is just an ordinary person. What are you up to? Wanda on the opposite side noticed that his gaze was Li Zi below, and suddenly felt a little bad in her heart. Sure enough, the next second, boom, on the opposite side, the Apostle Kila, who was surrounded by black mist, suddenly disappeared into the air with a flash. In an instant, He had already appeared above Lizzie's head, and the endless black mist condensed into a huge bat, which was suddenly thrown downwards. Boom! Lizzie, get out of the way. Seeing this, Wanda's pretty face turned pale, her heart seemed to stop suddenly, and a sense of suffocation came to her heart. The figure turned into a red light and flew over there. It's over. Seeing this, James Wu hurriedly pulled out his gun. Although he didn't like Lizzie very much, he couldn't watch a fresh life die. But the pistol jammed at a critical moment. Monica did not carry a gun. At the moment, the hand of the Apostle Carrot, as pale as a dry bone, has already reached out to the county below. Ah! Lizzie protected Josie and looked up at the Apostle Keela, who was swooping down. A dim light flashed across those deep eyes, and there was no panic on his face, but the arc of his mouth revealed contempt and disdain. It came just in time. Chapter 57. Big Brother, I'm afraid. The young Josie in her arms curled up, her immature face full of fear. Don't worry, Lizzie said a word of reassurance. Raising his head to look directly at the swooping Apostle Carrot, there was no fear on his face, but a disdainful smile on the corner of his mouth. A yellow-skinned monkey who doesn't know the heights of the sky and the earth. The Apostle Keela sneered, the surrounding black mist was hazy. Whoosh! The black mist condensed into giant bats, and it seemed like a dark cloud suddenly swept down. The huge wings fluttered, blowing bursts of neighing cold wind. Wrapped in the black mist, Carrot stretched out his arm and made the same movement with the black bat, grabbing Lizzie suddenly and holding him up. James Wu and Monica next to them didn't have time to react. They looked up and saw the black bat flying to the highest point of the hall, overlooking the bottom. Let go of Lizzie. The red light that Wanda turned into fell on Lizzie's previous position. There was no coldness on her face before, and her jewel-like eyes revealed fear. Hurry up and let Lizzie go. The witch's breathing gradually became rapid, and the scarlet power radiated from her eyes and hands. It was as if her mood at the moment distorted the space, showing a broken shape visible to the naked eye. Haha, you're scared, you're scared. The Apostle Keela watched all this condescendingly, with a deformed and rampant smile on his pale face. Immediately, his eyes suddenly became fierce. What are you afraid of? You have the best magical energy in the world. But you are hiding in a small town, playing house with an ordinary person. Stupid, it would be better to sacrifice Chaos Force to the Supreme Lord Mephisto. Apostle Carrot's cold voice echoed in the hall. 407 inches Wanda, don't pay attention to him, this guy is just pretending to be a tiger. At this time, Lizzie, who was carried by the black bat, shouted loudly. Shut up, you have a lot of guts, but unfortunately it doesn't change anything. The Apostle Carrot was surprised by the psychological quality of this Oriental man. As he spoke, a sharp sword appeared in his left hand, pointing at Lizzie's neck. Courage is given by strength. Lizzie responded lightly. Ah! Apostle K sneered disdainfully, ignored it, and turned his head to look at the crimson figure in the distance again. Wanda, I'll give you a minute to sacrifice myself among the pillars. Otherwise, when the time is up, the head will fall to the ground. As he spoke, he waved the long sword in his hand, waves of black aura rippling, and let out terrifying roars of evil spirits. Wanda took a deep breath and looked at Lizzie under the black bat, her white hands were trembling. It was the helplessness and fear in my heart, and I was afraid that the tragedy that had happened before my eyes would happen again. And it was she who caused this situation again. If she hadn't brought Lizzie here, such a thing AHFB wouldn't have happened. Don't waste time, there are 2 more magicians outside. The Apostle Keela glanced at the gate, and urged in a cold voice. Hey, you're scaring my witch. Lizzie noticed Wanda's slightly trembling hands, and his originally indifferent eyes became cold. A cloud of chaos magical energy gathered in the palm of the back. That mass of black energy was exactly the content of the first chapter in the Dark God book yesterday. Able to annihilate the souls of living beings. The reason why he only uses it now is because this move can only be used in close combat, and it cannot be used at long distances, and other moves cannot be used openly. We can only wait for this guy to deliver it to the door in person. Hee, soon she will belong to Lord Mephisto. Apostle Carrot sneered. However, he still doesn't know this sentence, which is far more serious than the contempt and disdain towards Lizzie before. Josie, don't close your ears. Lizzie said solemnly to the little girl in his arms. Josie just nodded. Buzz buzz. Li Zi's outstretched hand behind his back instantly gathered a cloudy energy ball, and swung it towards the apostle carrot above. The energy ball carrying mighty energy, a space world, caused the original complete hull to shake violently. James Wu, who was secretly changing magazines, was stunned when he saw this scene. How can he know magic? Wanda, did you teach him? At the same time, he also felt very embarrassed. He mentioned it many times before, and felt that Li Zi was an ordinary person and would get in the way. In the end, after a long time, this guy is just pretending. He can do magic, but he just wants to wait until the end. Seeing this scene, James Wu felt countless grass and mud horses galloping in his heart at the moment. It turns out that Joker has only him from the beginning to the end, this cowardly agent. Plum. Wanda stood there a little at a loss, looking up with a pair of beautiful eyes like a lake of clear water. She felt the breath of the dark god's calligraphy technique. And that energy is far stronger than yesterday's. At the moment, above the sky, the apostle carrot felt the power of the oncoming attack, and his face suddenly changed. He hurriedly waved the black bat to close its wings, trying to resist the impact of the energy ball. Next second, boom, the terrifying energy ball gathered by magic crashed on the black mist. A huge amount of roar suddenly resounded through the hall, and huge amounts of sound echoed. Then a strong gust of wind swept out, and that gust of wind was almost materialized, causing the hall to be filled with dust and mist, flying sand and rocks. Bang kai! The entire huge amounts of hall shook, and layers of dust fell from the ceiling. The remaining huge stone pillar in the center collapsed suddenly. Everyone hide. James Wu came back to his senses, opened his mouth and yelled, telling others to find cover to hide, and he ate a mouthful of ashes as soon as he said a few words. Without waiting for him to run back behind the desk. The strong wind had already overturned him, and he lay on the ground looking at the crumbling hall, muttering, Bodhisattva bless, I don't want to be buried in another world. Plum. The other side. Wanda looked at the space filled with black mist, her pretty face was tense and her white forehead was covered with sweat. Her scarlet power instantly condensed into a protective cover, and flew towards the direction of the strong wind. But she didn't wait for her to fly over. At this time, the whole hall shook violently, and then not only the hall was shaking. The entire space is shaking violently, and the surrounding environment is breaking, and every place around is bumping. It seems that it may collapse at any time, and everyone will fall into the void at that time. This place is going to collapse. When Wanda saw this scene, this idea immediately came to her mind. Whoosh! Just when she was in a trance, that group of black mist, where Li Zi and the apostle carrot fought, suddenly swept out a terrifying power zone. That force unreasonably lifted Wanda into the air, smashed it to the ground, and the bricks shattered, cracks spread like spider webs. Huge amounts of impact force also made her pass out. And the other people in the hall were also swept away, and the strong impact made everyone fall into a coma. At this moment, the closed door of the main hall suddenly opened. Bang! Wong, I'm right, Mephisto's apostles always like to hide in different dimensions. At the gate, two magicians in cloaks walked in one behind the other. Call me Sorcerer Supreme. Wong looked dissatisfied, and actually asked Stephen to find the site of the Mephisto apostle first every time. Whoosh! The strong wind that suddenly hit their faces, mixed with thick dust, made the two shut their mouths immediately. Cough cough cough. I have a bad feeling. Wong coughed violently and waved his hand in front of him. A golden light gradually dissipated the dust in front of his eyes. Wong, you were right this time. This place is going to collapse. Stephen looked slightly stunned, looked up at the ceiling, and found that the space was crumbling and gradually being broken down. Then he looked at the black mist again. His sharp eyes glowed with golden light, and through the black mist, he saw two figures exuding terrifying energy, constantly destroying the surrounding space. And one of the figures made Stephen look even more dignified. He seemed to feel a powerful magical power, even far surpassing the deceased ancient one magician. Chapter 58. Buzz buzz. At the moment, the space where the entire hall was located trembled violently, and the floor tiles under their feet gradually collapsed, revealing a void of nothingness and whiteness. Who is that? Stephen locked the figure in the black mist, and he knew that it must be one of the two who caused all this. Obviously, the Oriental man is the most suspect. He felt unprecedented powerful energy from this person, but the next second that energy was fleeting, as if it had never been there before. It even makes people wonder if it is an illusion. Stephen, the situation is not good, we have to take these people out quickly. Wang looked around and thousands of people fell unconscious on the ground. If the space completely collapsed, they would fall into the void with the physical body of ordinary people. I am afraid that it will be directly torn apart by the hurricane, and this space will also disappear with the passage of time. Well, it's important to save people first. Stephen withdrew his gaze from the black mist, planning to transfer people away with the king first. Using the portal, I always think this is definitely the greatest spell. Wang yelled, and the sling ring of his wrist was glowing with golden light, drawing a circle under several unconscious people. Whoosh! A portal emerged, and several people just fell directly into the circle below them, which was the cold forest outside. At present, any portal is the fastest and safest way. There are thousands of people, but they can't recite all of them. There are too many people. Seeing this, Stephen also sent people out one by one. At this time, he noticed a crimson figure lying not far away, recognized Scarlet Witch, and said in surprise, "Wanda." Cough cough cough. Wanda, who was in a coma, coughed a few times, slowly opened her eyes and woke up. "Stephen, why are you here?" She helped her forehead and just finished speaking. She immediately remembered her current situation, and raised her head to look at Heilu above the center of the hall. Two figures could still be felt in the black mist. She couldn't help but heaved a sigh of relief, but at the same time she was shocked. Although Li Zi used all the magic in the Dark God book, she had seen it in a rough reading, but can a beginner really have such a continuous high-energy explosion? Boom! But the thought was only fleeting, because the violent shaking of the main hall interrupted Wang Da's thoughts. Although the situation is a bit complicated to explain, and I am also puzzled why you are here, so it is best for us to go out first and find a coffee shop to sit down and talk. Stephen panted heavily, and cooperated with Wang to send most of the people out. Now only Wanda is left in the hall, and a few victims of the dream. I'm going to save Li first. Wanda looked towards the direction of the black mist, and then condensed chaos force into the air, flying towards the center of the hall. Hey, Wanda, don't go there. The space is unstable over there. Stephen saw this scene and hurriedly yelled. He perceived that the space in the central area was like thin paper. It may collapse at any time due to the impact of waves. But Wanda is eager to save people now. Seeing that Li Zi has not come out, her fair and pretty face is full of anxiety, and she directly ignores Dr. Strange's words. However, the next second, boom, the black mist gathered and scattered suddenly, and a raging energy storm swept out, rolling like a wave. The instant the mist gathered and dispersed, three figures descended one after another. Plum. Wanda saw the falling figures at a glance. It was Li Zi and Chao Qian, both of whom fell into a coma. Seeing this, she hurriedly waved her hand, wrapping the two of them with her scarlet force. On the other side, Wang saw that the ground was spreading and collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. He clenched his fists and drew a circle while shouting, "Stephen, the ground has collapsed. Open the portal wider and send them all out." "We should have done that earlier." Stephen gritted his teeth, and with both hands, the bright golden light filled the space. Following this, the lower part of the entire hall was covered by a golden portal, and the portal followed Stephen's hands up. Whoosh! Don't wait for other people in the space to react. In an instant, everyone was brought back to the cold forest outside. The original church is still there, but the open door is a real scene. Everything is back to normal and it is no longer an entrance to a different space. The people who had been teleported here before fell to pieces on the grass. The cold wind blowing did not wake them up. Bang! Call. Seeing that she was safe, Wanda breathed a sigh of relief. Her hands glowed scarlet. She held Li Zi and Chao Qian in the air, and put them on the grass. As soon as she put it down, she came to Li Zi's side, frowned and touched the man's pale face distressingly, took off the windbreaker and covered him. And tried to call softly, "Li." Her cautious voice trembled a little, as if she was afraid of something. Cough cough cough. Li Zi lying on the ground coughed a few times as if hearing a response. In fact, he is fine at all. Even if he uses the technique he just learned yesterday to deal with an apostle of Mephisto, it is still a breeze for him. After all, the technique is new, but his foundation is stronger than that of Wanda and Stephen. Seeing Dr. Strange Stephen appear, worried that this shrewd guy would become suspicious, and planned to pretend. so as not to be too strong to be suspected. But Lizzie couldn't pretend when she heard her witch's tone was very sad. After coughing lightly for a moment, he slowly opened his eyes. Wanda, I'm fine, I was just a little tired just now. As he spoke, he was about to sit up. Don't move and don't talk. Wanda hurriedly supported him, looked at the pale man, her eyelashes trembled slightly and her eyes flushed unconsciously. Your complexion is so bad, don't be brave. Then you should go and see Josie anyway. As soon as Lizzie got ready, he was held down by the witch's white hand, and he pointed to Chao Qian beside him helplessly. She's fine, I've checked. 0. Seeking flowers. Wanda had already perceived Josie. The little girl was just asleep. She's fine, but you seem to have lost half your life. Who said it? For it. Lizzie grabbed the witch's hand and felt it was tender and smooth. If you don't believe me, let's try it on the bed when we get back later. Shish, you're talking nonsense again. Wanda blushed when she heard this, covered his mouth, glanced at Josie who was narrating, and was relieved to see that she was still sleeping soundly. Witch, I'm not talking nonsense. Seeing the shy look of the witch, Lizzie couldn't help but want to continue teasing. Wanda, is he the apostle of Mephisto? At this moment, footsteps interrupted the two of them. It was Dr. Strange Stephen. He walked over and pointed to the man in black robe in the distance. He actually came out too. When Wanda heard this, she turned her head to look, her expression watery. The apostle Carrot also fell into the portal and escaped together. 0.0. But at the moment Carrot was completely unconscious and motionless. From my judgment, he should be the apostle of Nightmare. Stephen noticed Wanda's emotions and couldn't help raising his eyebrows. Scarlet Witch hasn't felt this angry for anyone in a long time. It seems that this man is not simple. Then he looked at Lizzie, stretched out his hand politely and said with a smile, are you a couple now? Ahem, cough, yes, hello, I'm Lizzie, Wanda's boyfriend. Lizzie met Stephen's gaze, smiled on his pale and weak face, coughed violently and stretched out his hand politely. Hi, I'm Stephen, they all like to call me Dr. Strange. Stephen said, holding Lizzie's hand tightly. Buzz. His fingertips radiated imperceptible energy instantly, which was constantly poured into Lizzie's palm, exploring every part of his body. This is Stephen's newly learned magic, which can explore the body and even the mind of the contact. Just now, the powerful aura he perceived on Lizzie in a different space is still fresh in his memory. That is a powerful aura far surpassing that of Ancient One magician. Thinking. Whoosh. Next second, Stephen's eyes suddenly went blank, and he successfully entered Lizzie's spiritual world. In the middle of the white spiritual world, a group of terrifying black aura gathered there, exuding a creepy aura. The power of evil spirits contained in it makes devil-like roars at all times. Just looking at it from a distance makes people feel a chill rushing to the top of their heads. Stephen stood still, his handsome face full of shock. As if seeing something unbelievable, the corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and he squeezed out a sentence. My God, what is that? Chapter 59. My God, what is that? In the white spiritual world, Stephen stood there in a daze, his handsome face full of shock. It was as if he had seen something unbelievable. In the distance, as the angle of view zoomed in, a group of terrifying black aura gathered there, and the turbulent black mist exuded a creepy atmosphere. The power of evil spirits contained in it makes devil-like roars at all times. Sure enough, this guy is a magician. Stephen was talking to himself. Whoosh. Suddenly, the cloud of black mist surged up and climbed up, and the entire spiritual world trembled violently. Discovered. Seeing this, Stephen immediately realized that he was probably noticed. So I closed my eyes, took a deep breath and wanted to return to the spiritual world. Although the outside world may only have passed for a few seconds, it would be embarrassing if I was caught. However, when he opened his eyes again, he found that the world around him was still white, and his heart tightened. The biggest disadvantage of this technique is that if the opponent's mind is strong enough, it can trap the user's soul in the spiritual world forever, while the physical body in the real world will be reduced to an empty shell. Stephen took a deep breath and closed his eyes tightly, trying to break free again. But when he opened his eyes, there was still an unchanging white world around him, and he couldn't hear the sound of the outside world. For a moment, he was a little panicked. Originally he just wanted to test it out. Instead, he was imprisoned by the opponent. Damn it. At this moment, the entire spiritual world trembled. Stephen looked up and looked around. I saw that the black mist at the moment rising in the distance had swept in, covered half of the sky, and condensed into an oriental dragon in the blink of an eye. The carved dragon was lifelike, swooping down towards Stephen's abyss-like mouth. Stephen knew that everything was not true, but he had the overwhelming coercion brought by the September 47 inches dragon, as well as suffocating fear, both creepy. Next second, the dragon had already opened its huge mouth to swallow him, and then his eyes suddenly went black. The cold air is always wrapped around the whole body, like falling into a cold abyss. There is no end in sight, falling all the way down, and you can't see the end at a glance. Stephen has never felt this kind of fear, even knowing that everything is false. But it kept hitting his heart. Meanwhile, the real world. Stephen, Wanda next to her watched the two men hold each other for a few seconds without separating, and frowned slightly. But when she had Stephen's absent-minded eyes, and Lizzie's equally stiff eyes, the witch's face suddenly turned cold, and scarlet power gathered in her palm, and she slammed on Stephen's body, saying coldly, "Stephen, wake up. Call." Stephen's lifeless eyes suddenly woke up. He shook off the hand he was holding for the first time, and took a few steps back in shock. He propped his legs on his hands and panted heavily. Sweat dripped from his forehead, as if he had just experienced a nightmare. Cough, cough, cough. At the same time, Lizzie also came back to his senses. His pale face looked even more haggard. "Lee, are you okay?" Seeing his expression, Wanda touched his hand distressedly. "Your hands are so cold." Lizzie coughed weakly, with a blank face. What happened just now? I seem to have a nightmare. It's Stephen. When Wanda heard this, her cold eyes fell on Stephen, who was gasping for breath. Next second, whoosh, the witch's crimson figure flashed and turned into a gust of red wind. She came to Stephen in an instant, and stretched out her hand to grab the other's neck. "Bring it up now. Ahem, Wanda, listen to my explanation." Stephen met Wanda with frosty, emotionless eyes, and suddenly had a bad feeling. Scarlet Witch in a runaway state is not easy to deal with. "Stephen, we're friends, I hope you can be friends, but why don't you respect Lizzie?" Wanda got angry. Her charming eyes glowed with a terrifying scarlet light. "I know you want to test his background, but you shouldn't hurt him." As she spoke, the witch's fingers tightened a little. "Wanda. You listen to me, I really didn't do anything, just took a look." Stephen knew he was in the wrong, not sure. But in fact, he was very confused, and he just wanted to test Lizzie's background. "In fact, the person who got hurt was clearly me, okay." Until now, he still hasn't recovered from the fear just now, and the chilling feeling has been lingering in his heart from the beginning to the end. I'm fine. Stephen didn't do it on purpose. Let him go." Lizzie felt very warm when he saw the witch's behavior, but he didn't like to see the witch like this. Similar dirty work is still left to men to do. I still like that witch who is kind and sweet. Boom. Never again. Wanda heard Lizzie's words, and realized that she was a little impulsive, and her image looked too scary. So he quickly dropped Stephen in his hand. "Sorry, it was an accident this time." Stephen touched La Hong's neck, feeling very complicated. He didn't expect Wanda to be so angry for Lizzie. At this time, he thought of the black mist in the spiritual world again, and he didn't plan to take care of this matter. You can see the intimate behavior of Wanda and Lizzie. Stephen felt the need to find out, lest Wanda be deceived. Thinking of him, he looked at Lizzie and said slowly, "Actually, I have something to ask. In your spiritual world just now, I saw a cloud of black mist exuding the breath of black magic. Do you practice black magic?" Lizzie was stunned when he heard this, and replied, "I don't know, maybe it's just learning the Dark God book, maybe it's backlash." The reason why I said that was actually to wash away Stephen's suspicion of himself. Put all your attention on the Book of Darkness. Wait a minute, you said you practice the Dark Divine Book. Really? Stephen caught the most crucial word, the Book of Darkness, and hurriedly asked. "The Dark God Book we found in a black magician." Next to Wanda explained, "You too, that's not a good thing. I admit that the Dark Divine Book can bring powerful power to practitioners, making it worse than flying." After hearing this, Stephen frowned and said solemnly, "But I read in ancient books before that some people became sacrifices to the ancient god Sithorn after practicing the Dark God Book." What? Wanda's beautiful eyes were slightly startled, and her face was full of shock. Definitely that is just a legend. No one is sure if it is a real event, but no one can guarantee 100% that it will not happen. Stephen explained, recalling being in church earlier. The terrifying strength displayed by Lizzie, as well as the black mist seen in the spiritual world, are most likely related to the Dark Divine Book. After all, an ordinary person can possess such terrifying strength. The only thing that can be explained is the cultivation of the Dark Divine Book. The Dark Divine Book, to be honest, it's not a good thing. King Magician, who had been checking whether the sleepwalker was injured, strode over when he heard these words. As an old magician, his experience is far higher than that of Dr. Strange Stephen, so he naturally knows the Dark God Book. Then his eyes fell on Wanda, and he continued, but Scarlet Witch, you have Chaos Force, so it shouldn't be a problem to practice the Dark Divine Book. But Lizzie, you should stop practicing. King Magician said seriously. Hear what the two said. Aha, Wanda nodded. After all, Kamar Taj can be said to be the most powerful and righteous magician organization on Earth, and they will not deceive them in this regard at all. What's more, in fact, the witch also knows in her heart that after coming into contact with the Dark Book last night, I already felt the breath of black magic. Lizzie, can you tell me how long you have been practicing this book, Dark God? Stephen looked puzzled, and then stated the purpose. If you have been in contact for too long, it is best to perform an exorcism to make Sithorn's soul abandon you. It is indeed necessary. Wong Magician nodded. Judging from what they saw in the different space before, they both believed that Lizzie had been practicing the Dark God Book for a long time. This will seriously affect a person's mind, and the rumored sacrificial event may also occur. However, Lizzie's answer stunned the two magicians. Just learned last night. Wait a minute, did you learn this dark book last night? Which chapter did you learn? Stephen was shocked, and even wondered if he heard it wrong. I just practiced the Dark Divine Book last night, and today I can nuclear explode a different space. As Kamar Taj's most talented Stephen in the past century, he naturally felt that it was impossible, and he said again, Lee, this matter is very serious, please don't joke. I'm telling the truth, the Dark Divine Book I just found yesterday. Lizzie is too lazy to lie. Anyway, ability exposure does not count as exposure. Besides, if he doesn't say it, he will say it. Lee didn't lie, he learned it with me yesterday, but he learned it at a glance. As Wanda said, she hugged Lizzie proudly. Lizzie has extraordinary abilities. This is impossible. Stephen felt that his worldview was shattered. Many years ago, Ancient One Magician said that he was already a genius among geniuses. But now I have encountered a more perverted one. Unwilling to give up, he asked, which article did you learn? Half of learning. When I dealt with Carrot just now, I used all my skills, all of which were from the Dark God Book. Lizzie's words. It was like a hammer smashing Stephen's proud self-esteem into pieces. Although the first half of the Dark God Book can be relatively simple, even if it takes a day to learn the first half, the ability is still monstrous. It should be clear that when he learned the Sling Ring Arbitrary Door, he spent 3 full days. Stephen, admit it, there are a lot of geniuses in the world. Seeing Stephen's constipated look, Wong burst out laughing. Then he looked at Lizzie, smiled and said, are you interested in going to Kamar Taj to learn magic? No, the witch told me to go to Kamar Taj to have no distractions and not think about anything. I still yearn for freedom. Lizzie shook his head and went to Kamar Taj to make some jokes. I went to that place to accompany a group of old men, and I got up every morning to practice against the cold wind, and I got up early all day long, so I couldn't even touch a woman's little hands. Sleeping at night has to be squeezed into a dormitory, and the environment is closed all year round. He was really worried that if he slept there without his back facing the wall, someone would hit him hard at night. Don't think about it, Lee wants to stay with me. Wanda hugged Lizzie and declared her sovereignty to Fatty Wong. My lord, everyone has his own aspirations, don't persuade others. Stephen coughed a few times and said so. It's a pity in his heart. A good magician, walking on the right path, will make them a group of magicians who walk between dimensions every day easier. Otherwise, like the Ancient One Magician, alone, he has worked hard all his life until he dies before he can rest in peace. Cough cough cough. At this time, the Apostle Keela who fell on the ground not far away woke up. Holding his torn body, he slowly got up from the ground. As soon as he stood up staggeringly, he met several pairs of indifferent gazes. Among them was a crimson figure, whose gaze made the scalp tingle even more. It's like Satan coming out of hell. Everyone has something to say. The Apostle Kila was discouraged, and staggered and sat back on the ground begging for mercy. Witch, give him to Stephen to deal with. Seeing the hostility in the witch's eyes, Lizzie quickly held her white and smooth little hand, and said softly, I still like fragrant and soft witches, cold ones don't look good. Wanda nodded obediently, and looked at Carrot meaningfully before retracting her gaze. Kamar Taj does have a specific penal code against evil magicians. You two, see you when you have time, I will take you away first. Stephen's fingertips glowed with golden light. He bound Carrot with binding magic, and looked around, seeing unconscious sleepwalkers all over the place. The rest of the people here are left to you. Stephen, we have to go to the west to find the Sterling magician. Wong reminded. Almost forgot about them. With one word to another, the two drew out the dimension portal and left with the Apostle Carrot. Not long after Lizzie and Wanda stayed where they were, the agents of the Tianjian Bureau rushed to the scene, and the director Hayward also arrived at the scene in person. This matter has too much influence, and too many people are missing. And it was too weird, and the superiors attached great importance to it, so Hayward had to come in person. Then Lizzie and the two briefly explained what happened. After sending Josie home, they also left in a hurry. Go home. Comfortable. As soon as Lizzie walked into the living room, she couldn't wait to jump onto the soft sofa, taking a deep breath with exhaustion written all over her face. He is indeed a little tired. If the Master 1.1 is tired, he is a little drowsy. Lee, are you sure you're okay? Wanda looked at the man with a bad face. Ching Sheng's tone was full of distress. It's okay, just get some sleep. Lizzie said with a relaxed face, Witch, don't think so much, I'll take a shower first, and sleep together later to recover blood. He stretched and stood up. Kissing the witch's forehead as white as jade, she took her clothes and turned into the bathroom. In the living room. It's all my fault. Wanda thought of Lizzie's relaxed expression just now, and felt even more uncomfortable. With his personality, the more uncomfortable he is, the more he has to pretend to be nonchalant. Hateful Apostle Claw. The witch thought of the Apostle Carla who was taken away by Stephen, and she clenched her hands involuntarily. A cold light flashed in her eyes. Then she was wrapped in scarlet light and disappeared in place. A red light outside the house flew towards the west of the town. However, the red light disappeared behind the horizon. The bathroom door opened. Hey, the witch is really disobedient. It was Lizzie. He stood by the door and looked at the empty living room, shaking his head helplessly. He knew Wanda would look for Carrot. A witch doesn't tolerate anyone hurting someone she cares about. Even Stephen was almost beaten up today. Sick little witch, how could you let your hands be stained with blood? He said. With a wave of his hand, strips of black cloth were wrapped around his body, and then gathered into a black ancient-style black dress. The whole person flickered with the bathroom light and turned black in an instant. The figure in black and ancient-style black clothes disappeared with the darkness. Chapter 60. West District of Zijing Town. As the night approached the early morning, the town was immersed in silence, the cold streets were deserted, and the lights of the roadside shops were almost turned off. Only one tavern sign was still lit, and the colorful lights reflected the water-stained road surface, setting off sparkling waves. In the tavern, you didn't take back that dark book. Master Sterling listened to Stephen and told about Lizzie and Wanda's cultivation of the Dark God book. His expression was serious. In the impression of the big magicians of Kamar Taj's older generation, all those who practice black magic are members of a cult who do all kinds of evil. Master Sterling, it's 2024 now. As long as black magic doesn't have backlash effects, good or bad has nothing to do with people. In front of the bar, Stephen took a sip of wine, put down his glass and said nothing. Others don't know, but as a direct disciple of Ancient One, he naturally knows that in the eyes of outsiders, he is the sorcerer supreme who stands tall above Shengwei Guangzhong. In fact, he is also practicing black magic, absorbing the power zone that is unique to Mephisto. However, Ancient One did not fall because of this, but used black magic to fight against the invasion of Dimension Mephisto. It was also from then on that Stephen felt that as long as he practiced black magic and did not do evil, it didn't matter if he practiced day and night. But I personally feel that Sterling touched the goatee, still feeling a shock in his heart. Sterling is a great magician. Lizzie has already learned most of it, and the content is probably memorized in his mind. Even if he takes back the Book of Darkness, it is useless. Wang Sheng was afraid that the old man would continue to babble, so he interrupted him directly. Sterling was stunned as he stroked his goatee hand, his slightly narrowed eyes widened, and he trembled in disbelief. What? He has already learned most of it. Didn't you say he just got it yesterday? Quote. Well, I haven't read the Dark God book, but I don't think the content of that book is very simple. Wang nodded, and now he mentioned the fat face still revealing emotion. He has learned almost the same. Sterling walked back and forth in front of the bar with trembling hands. Then he pointed at the two with their beards raised, and said angrily, "You guys. I'm so mad. Big Sterling magician, this kind of thing." Stephen, who was drinking, was stunned. It was the first time he saw Sterling so angry. He didn't expect the old man to be so resistant to black magic. Wang 07 next to him also coughed a few times, thinking about explaining. In fact, we can. Shut up first. I'm angry that you didn't bring people. Such talents should be brought to Kamar Taj. Let me teach them, and I will definitely become a generation of great magicians, and even the next sorcerer supreme. Master Sterling stroked his goatee, gritted his teeth with hatred for iron. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Stephen and Wang froze immediately. It turned out that the old man was angry about this matter, and he was not still talking about black magic before. As a result, now that you see someone's ability, you want to earn money as an apprentice. Bah, what a shameless and shameless old thief with double standards. Lizzie doesn't want to go to Kamar Taj at all, and not everyone in the world wants to be a monk. Stephen coughed a few times, speechless. But such a talent, oh. The magician Sterling didn't know what to say, so he sighed several times. Express his current mood. Bang. While the three were chatting, there was a loud noise from the second floor, and the ceiling trembled and some dust fell. What happened? When Wang heard the movement, he slapped the table and stood up. Sorcerer Supreme, that apostle has escaped. A magician staggered and ran downstairs with a panicked expression. Damn it, Stephen, your binding power can't even trap an apostle. Wang casually drew out the dimension portal, and seeing that the second floor was really empty, he was a little angry. We should bring people back to Kamar Taj first. Stephen felt a burst of heat on his face, and he was unlucky at home today. First, he was backlashed in Lizzie's spiritual world, and now the apostle escaped because of his mistake. Stop talking nonsense, hurry up and chase. The magician Sterling put out spells with both hands, and a golden light flew out from his fingertips, chasing after the breath of the apostle, sinking into the dark street. Seeing this, several people didn't delay any longer, and all chased after Jin Guang. If the apostle really escaped, he would have to try to find him later. It's harder than climbing to the sky. At the same time, on a dark and damp street, cloud of black mist suddenly appeared at the corner of the street, and in the blink of an eye, the black mist condensed into a human form. It was the apostle Carrot who had just escaped from the tavern. Ha ha ha, some Kamar Taj jokers are trying to catch me. After Kara glanced at it, she couldn't help raising her head and laughing triumphantly. Goodbye, everyone. For a moment, he put away his smile, his eyes became fierce and he glanced at Dongbian Township, his tone was full of coldness and hostility. Boy, wait for me to come back. Mix the magic book of darkness, all your women will become the tribute of Lord Mephisto. Just now I learned from Dr. Strange that Lizzie also has a dark gentleman, which made him very excited. No dark magician can resist the power brought by the dark book. Not to mention the dark god book, plus origin magic power. No need to wait, we can solve the problem now. However, at this moment, an extra shadow appeared behind him at some unknown time. Accompanied by a cold and hoarse voice sounded. The surrounding air seemed to drop suddenly, and the space seemed to turn into an ice cave in an instant. The apostle Carrot's figure froze in place, and an inexplicable chill rushed from the soles of her feet to the top of her head. He glanced at Shadow, then turned his head to look backward. It's you. We have a bill to settle. It was Lizzie who came, and he had already taken off his mask. A pair of deep eyes with a cold gleam, like Satan walking out of hell. Damn. Apostle Carrot clenched his fists tightly, and a group of black aura condensed. But next second, on the opposite side, Li Zi, who was dressed in black, suddenly started, turning into an afterimage like a cheetah stepping out, without giving him any chance to react. In an instant, the fist had already swung. Boom. The moment the powerful punch was released, it drove the surrounding air to form a huge cyclone, rippling in the narrow streets. A strong gust of wind rattled the windows on both sides. Some windows were directly shattered. What? The Apostle Carrot felt his eyes go dark, and his body fell uncontrollably. The uncontrolled body hit the wall like a cannonball. Bang! The wall suddenly cracked with huge amounts of spider web cracks. The entire wall was crumbling, as if it might collapse at any time. Cough, cough, cough. The Apostle Carrot collapsed on the ground and was dying. He coughed violently and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. The place where he was hit on his chest showed an obvious depression. He tried his best to stand up, but the bones in his body seemed to be crushed, and he couldn't exert any strength at all. At this time, Li Zi came over and knelt down, pressing one hand on his head. Waste, how dare you covet my witch? The tone is neither heavy nor light, but it sounds particularly cold. Chilling. Let me go. The pupils of the Apostle Kila trembled, and he looked at the Eastern man in front of him in fear. I won't kill you, neither will the magician of Kamar Taj let you go. As he spoke, Li Zi exerted a slight force on his fingers, and the magic runes lit up, and the force continued to increase, squeezing the head of the Apostle Carrot. Creak. With the sound of tearing, the Apostle Carrot felt a pool of warm blood on his forehead. And the strength is still increasing. Whoosh. Hey, let him go. At this time, several figures appeared from the entrance of the alley on the left. It was Stephen. He strode over and waved his hands, a magic shield condensed on his fists, and said loudly, Sorry buddy, he is a prisoner of Kamar Taj. But he's in my hands now. The instant Li Zi turned his head, the mask appeared on his face. Immediately, he grabbed the Apostle Carrot and lifted it up. Having said that, everything should be said first come first served. Wang stepped forward and said slowly, Besides, he is the Apostle of Mephisto. If you kill him like this, you will be targeted by Mephisto. I do not mind. Li Zi doesn't care. He is too lazy to listen to the nonsense of some people, so he tightens his fingers decisively. However, he felt an invisible barrier restricting his fingers, and he couldn't press them down for a long time. Li Zi was puzzled. When he saw a subtle scarlet light, the corners of his mouth under the mask couldn't help but draw a curve. Turn your head and look towards the alley entrance on the right. Sure enough, a crimson figure was walking towards this side, and she was raising one hand towards this side, glowing with bright scarlet light. Instantly illuminate the dim street, covering the street with a layer of light red gauze. Black Shadow, let him go. Wanda's eyes were cold and her tone was devoid of any emotion. Those who hurt Li Zi must solve it with their own hands. Wanda, didn't you hand over the Apostle Carrot to us? Stephen saw that the witch was confused. What's going on? A Mephisto apostle can be robbed. It seems that the performance of the magicians is not very good. They even have their eyes on the Mephisto apostle. Wang next to him complained. That's what Li said, not me. Wanda glanced at him and said slowly. So you'd better listen to your boyfriend, and children who don't obey will be punished. After seeing the witch, Li Zi's mood was not as cold as before, and his tone was not consciously softer, and he habitually joked. Give him to me. It doesn't matter if you don't say anything. Wanda reacted after hearing this, and rushed back by herself. If Li Zi takes a shower, she will be angry if she doesn't see her. No. Li Zi shook his head and tightened his fingers. Click. The Apostle Carrot, who was dying in his hand, didn't even have a chance to struggle. His neck suddenly tilted, and his frightened eyes lost their light. Completely lost breath. Seeing this, Wanda was so angry that she couldn't speak, so she swung her right hand vigorously. A burst of scarlet chaos energy spewed out, and the bright scarlet light illuminated the alley, blasting towards the man in black ancient costume in front of him. Murder your own husband. Startled, Li Zi dropped the corpse in his hand and hid to the side. Boom. The scarlet power carrying terrifying power hit the corpse on the ground, instantly annihilating the corpse and turning it into dust. Really? He looked at the pile of ashes and glanced in the direction of the witch. There was no one at the entrance of the alley. Next second. Whoosh. A crimson figure suddenly appeared behind him. The left hand gathered the raging scarlet power, and suddenly swung towards him with little power. But the scarlet power vibrates the space. Wanda. Calm down. Fortunately, Li Zi reacted quickly enough, and his body turned into a black aura and collapsed. In an instant, recondensed into a human form not far from the witch. Bang! Wanda punched nothing and landed on the wall. Immediately many bricks fell off one after another and smashed to pieces. There was a cloud of dust. Opposite the alley, the Kamar-Taj trio who had been standing watching the battle quickly took a few steps back to avoid being affected. Is this origin magic power? Among them, Grand Magician Sterling felt the light shining on his face, his pupils trembling slightly. That's right, she has chaos force inside her. Stephen nodded in response. It seems that the man in black is going to suffer. Sterling muttered, the big magician. I haven't seen this person before, but it seems to be a new superhero who has become popular on INS recently. Stephen looked at the masked man in black, and he finally remembered, the new superhero that has become popular these days. Isn't it this guy? Interesting, the Black Shadow seems to be a magician, shall we try to persuade them to fight? Wong said. No, Wang Yin is free. Stephen knew that Wanda wanted to vent her dissatisfaction at most, and would not do anything too extreme. Although those few blows were powerful, Wanda didn't make any fatal attacks, and the speed of his shots was much slower than usual, giving Sombra a chance to react. Boom! At the moment, Wanda spread her hands out and the palms were continuously gathering, a stream of bright scarlet light. She stretched out her hand towards the broken bricks on the ground, and pulled hard. Whoosh! The bricks split into sharp pieces, shooting towards Li Zi's position overwhelmingly. Chi. Seeing this, Li Zi turned into a black aura again to avoid the attack, and the sharp fragments hit the ground, and the stone brick floor was hit 490 and riddled with holes. The witch is on top. He felt that the witch's mood fluctuated greatly, and now she didn't really do it, and every move was half a beat slower, obviously to vent her emotions. But if the fight goes on, the witch will probably do it. What is the word called? It's getting stronger. Thinking about it, Li Zi didn't stay any longer. He jumped onto a billboard on the second floor, bathed in moonlight, overlooking the crimson figure in the alley. Come down, Wanda said coldly. Sorry, we are opponents now. Li Zi shook his head, then waved and shouted, Wanda, you need to calm down, we will meet again next time. Almost forgot, there is also King Doctor Strange, and there is another one I don't know, goodbye everyone. As he spoke, he turned his back and jumped towards the sky. But this is the move. Wanda, who originally planned to use the scarlet power to pull the Black Shadow down, was stunned. The witch's cold eyes gradually became clear. She squinted slightly to see her back disappearing into the sky, and it took a long time to look away thoughtfully. Wanda, what's the matter? Stephen, who came over, wondered. It's nothing, I'll go back first. The words fell. Wanda was surrounded by scarlet light, soaring into the sky and flying towards the east. Recalling the back just now in her mind, she felt more and more familiar, because that back looked very much like Li Zi. Yes, very similar. She was stunned just now because the back of the black figure coincided with the back of Li Zi in her mind in a trance. Could it be him? No, Li Mingming is taking a shower in the bathroom, and the shadow is going to the west, not the direction of home. In the sky, Wanda, who flew to the community apartment, talked to herself. But the thoughts in my mind couldn't help being interrupted. Because the witch thought that she could sneak out. Then Li Zi can also sneak out after she leaves. And the back looks so similar. If it is true, why did Li Zi hide himself, just for the origin magic power, or is there another secret? Probably not for origin magic power. Probably not. Wanda couldn't control the thoughts that emerged in her mind, and couldn't help shaking her head, not wanting to think about these issues anymore. At this time, the community apartment has appeared in the field of vision. The top floor is lit, the bathroom is lit. Hurry back and see if you don't know. Wanda had been looking around just now, but didn't find anyone coming back. If Sombra is really Li Zi, then I will definitely go back before him. Thinking. With complicated emotions, Wanda turned into a scarlet light and returned to the living room. The bright living room was empty, and the bathroom door was still closed. Did not hear the slightest sound of running water. Plum, Wanda called out softly. No one responded, only the beating sound of clock hands. For a moment, her heart couldn't help tightening, and she walked towards the bathroom door with frightened steps. Put your hand on the handle and try to pull it down. Click. The door is open, but there is still no response. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.